So I recently went through something no one ever imagines will happen in their own home. The place that's supposed to be your safe haven suddenly turned into someone else's playground because the HOA president decided my private pool wasn't mine anymore. She said it was hers, or rather the community. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just a petty fight over rules. This was about my brother, about his peace, and about whether I'd let someone with a clipboard and a power trip rewrite the meaning of home. It started with the sound of high heels cracking against the patio like rifle shots. Saturday morning, calm as glass. I had just skimmed the last leaf from the water because keeping that pool clear isn't just about looks, it's about my younger brother, Sam. Floating there helps him keep the anxiety at bay, helps him breathe when life gets too loud. That pool isn't luxury, it's therapy, it's family. And then came Karen. She strutted in like she owned the place, shark smile plastered on her face, clutching a clipboard like it was a warrant. No knock, no permission, just a voice sharp enough to cut the air. Your pool is now the HOA's VIP venue. She was already thumbing out texts, probably blasting invites to her so-called influencers. It wasn't even a request. She, written up a new rule overnight. A midnight code update that somehow transformed my backyard into community property. Sam hugged his sketchbook tight, shrinking into himself. That did it for me. Karen wanted a party? Fine, but the only fireworks would come from me. Tom, she chirped, louder than the birds she'd just scared off. Just the man I needed. I didn't move, didn't smile. Sometimes silence is sharper than any words, but Karen never learned how to read silence. She flipped her paper dramatically, announcing like she was some kind of mayor at a press conference. The HOA is hosting a very exclusive VIP soiree next Saturday, and we've decided, she paused, savoring it, that your pool will be the centerpiece. I blinked once, calm, level. My pool. She smirked like I was slow. Per the new event priority mandate, Section C, subsection 4, HOA-sanctioned premier events can utilize designated prime community areas. I've designated your pool. Designated, like she was a queen and my deed was a toy crown. That gritty part of me that doesn't like being told what to do, it stirred awake. I pointed at the sign on the gate, private property, no trespassing. Sam had even painted little flowers around it to soften the blow to make it friendly. Karen looked at it the way you'd look at garbage on your lawn. Oh, that's cute, Tom, but this is an official HOA event. Influencers are coming. You wouldn't want to cause problems, would you? She flashed that smile again, but her tone was colder. There are fines for non-compliance, significant fines. I kept my voice steady, though I could feel the steel in it now. You're not using my pool. You're not hosting anything in my yard. This conversation is over. Her face tightened, eyes narrowing into slits. You'll regret this. The HOA has rules for a reason. And then she spun on her heel and stomped away, heels firing like gunshots. Silence came back, but it wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the silence before a storm. Sam's voice was small. What are we going to do, Tom? I put my arm around him. Don't worry, Sammy, I'll handle Karen. But deep down, I knew the truth. Karen never let go, not when she thought she was right, which in her world was always. And this wasn't the first time. No, this was just her latest stunt in a reign that had already stretched too far. 3 years ago, when Sam and I first moved here, the HOA had been harmless. They kept flower beds tidy, organized 4th of July potlucks, nothing major. But when Karen slid into the president's chair, a seat nobody else wanted, she didn't see guidelines, she saw weapons. She wielded the bylaws like a hammer, smashing anything that didn't fit her idea of perfection. Her first crusade, my mailbox. Apparently the beige that came with the house was not the correct shade of beige. She taped a typed letter to my door, complete with a Pantone color code, and threatened daily fines unless I repainted it. I thought it was a joke. Sam didn't. He panicked, imagining us losing the house over paint, so I caved. I painted it her approved beige, and she showed up in person, clipboard in hand, to compare the color with her little chip card. She squinted, hummed, and finally nodded. Acceptable, she declared, like she was doing me a favor. That's when I knew Karen didn't just want compliance, she wanted control. Next came Sam's roses. He'd planted a stunning climbing rose bush by the porch, vibrant and fragrant, his pride and joy. Karen said it obstructed the architectural integrity of the house. Another letter, another threat. But this time I fought back. I combed through the bylaws and wrote her a polite reply, quoting every clause she was twisting. She hated it. She sent another letter claiming it violated the spirit of the rules. That's what Karen did. She bent the rules until they fit her power trip. So when she marched into my yard demanding my pool, I knew what it meant. This wasn't about community. This wasn't about rules. This was about her ego. My pool was the nicest one in the neighborhood. She wanted it as her stage, her crown jewel, and she thought I'd roll over like I had with the mailbox. But this wasn't paint. This wasn't roses. This was home. This was Sam's sanctuary, and I wasn't bending anymore. She thought she could push me. She thought she knew who I was, quiet, compliant, easily managed. She was about to find out how wrong she was. Everyone thinks they know their neighbors. You wave, you nod, you talk about the weather, maybe the price of gas. But what do you really know? Do you know what they're capable of when they want something badly enough? That Monday morning I found out. Sam was the one who saw it first. A paper taped to our front door like an eviction notice. He stood frozen on the porch, clutching it like it was radioactive. When I took it from his hands, I saw why. Official mandate and reservation confirmation. It read in bold, bureaucratic letters. Pages of legal-sounding nonsense followed, stamped with Karen's beloved initials. It claimed that the Willow Creek HOA had reserved my backyard, my pool, for an exclusive VIP welcome party. Liability would only transfer to the HOA during event hours. Access to restroom facilities was presumed. Setup would begin Saturday at 10:00 a.m. sharp. I crumpled the paper in my fist before Sam could see the anger twisting my face. They weren't just claiming my pool, they were walking straight into our home. Into the only place Sam felt safe, and that I couldn't let happen. Sam's voice was barely above a whisper. She can't really do that, can she, Tom? I forced my breathing steady, smoothing the paper out on the table. No, buddy, she can't. Not legally, not ever. But I knew Karen wouldn't stop. She had her flyers printed, her mandate crafted, her clipboard soldiers ready to march. And somewhere deep down, I could feel the storm tightening. I spent an hour on the phone with Brenda, the board district HOA representative. Her sighs were louder than her answers. Local boards have broad discretion, she droned. You could file a dispute at the next meeting. The next meeting was 3 weeks away. The party, 5 days. Brenda wasn't going to save us. But Hank, my neighbor 2 doors down, had a different kind of advice. He called before lunch, voice full of mischief. Heard the imperial decree arrived, he said. So what's the plan? Barricades, water balloons, I've got old plumbing pipes, we could rig a catapult. I chuckled despite the knot in my chest. Tempting, Hank, but I think we need something less jail-worthy. He sighed like a disappointed child. Fine, but if you change your mind about a poolside trebuchet, you know where I live. It would have been funny, if not for what he told me next. He'd overheard Karen at the clubhouse bragging loudly on her phone. She'd mentioned deposits, non-refundable deposits, guaranteed ambience. That stuck in my mind. Deposits for a venue she didn't own, for my pool. That night, Sam barely touched his dinner. He sat by the window, staring at the water glinting in the porch light. She's really going to do it, he murmured. She's telling everyone it's hers. I leaned on the counter, the weight of it pressing me down. That pool wasn't just concrete and tile. It was the place where my brother could breathe. And now it was a stage for her fantasy. That was when the idea struck me. Simple, clean, ironclad. Karen wanted my pool. Fine, she could have it, empty. A drained pool is not a party venue. A drained pool is maintenance, and maintenance is my right. The next morning, the neighborhood notice board confirmed everything. Karen had plastered it with glossy flyers. Grand VIP soiree at Willow Creek's premier aquatic oasis. The photo was unmistakably my pool, though doctored with fake palm trees and a sunset that never touched this town. At the bottom, in smaller print, it read, hosted by your dedicated HOA president, Karen Smith. No mention of the actual homeowner, of course not. Sam came home from the store, pale and shaken. She's really doing it, Tom. She's telling everyone. He held out the flyer like it was proof of our eviction. I looked at the words again. Exclusive networking, gourmet refreshments, lakeside ambience. Lies stacked on lies, and then Hank called back with more. He'd overheard Karen talking to the caterer. 50 VIPs confirmed, plus their plus ones. Tickets sold, tickets that were non-refundable. Swag bags, entry fees. This wasn't a neighborhood event anymore. This was a business scheme on my land. That night I told Sam the truth. She's not just pushing us around, buddy. She's selling tickets, taking money for something she doesn't even own. His eyes widened, horrified. She's cheating people. I nodded, and she's using our home to do it. That little spark in Sam's eyes, the one that showed he wasn't just scared anymore, he was angry. That was when I knew. We weren't just defending property. We were defending dignity. So I made a list. Heavy-duty submersible pump, check. Extension cords, check. Big foam board sign reading pool closed, urgent owner repairs. Check. Copies of my deed and the HOA's own master bylaws, definitely. My phone, fully charged, video camera ready in case she tried to twist the story, absolutely. I was preparing for war, quiet suburban war. That Friday night, I walked the backyard one more time. The tiles glowed under the porch lights. The water shimmered calm and clear. Tomorrow it would be gone. Tomorrow, Karen's empire would collapse before it even began. I poured myself a mug of coffee, sat by the pool, and listened to the stillness. Somewhere inside, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She thought she had me figured out. The quiet neighbor who painted his mailbox beige to avoid trouble. The guy who nodded politely at HOA meetings and never raised his voice. But sometimes the quiet ones are the ones who fight hardest when the line gets crossed. Saturday morning would be the reckoning. And Karen had no idea what was coming. Some mornings begin with birdsong, others with coffee steam curling into sunlight. That Saturday morning began with the steady, mechanical hum of defiance. The submersible pump kicked on just after sunrise, rattling against the concrete like a war drum. Water surged through the thick hose, spilling in a roaring torrent down to the storm drain at the edge of my property. Every gallon that left that pool wasn't just water. It was Karen's fantasy evaporating. I stood over it with my coffee mug, the steam rising as the pool slowly sank. It was strange, watching something so familiar disappear. The turquoise surface that had been Sam's sanctuary was shrinking with every minute. But instead of loss, what I felt was relief, because the pool wasn't being stolen. It was being reclaimed. Sam stumbled out onto the patio around 8, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He froze when he saw the water level already inches lower than the night before. His jaw dropped, then curved into a grin. "You're really doing it," he whispered, almost in awe. I gave him a sideways smile. "Urgent maintenance, buddy, safety first." He chuckled, the sound freer than I'd heard in days. He dragged over a chair and sat beside me, sketchbook balanced on his lap. Instead of anxious scribbles, this time he drew the pump, a boxy beast of a thing, wires like veins, hoses like serpents. But in his version it had teeth, sharp ones, his quiet way of showing that sometimes machines could bite back. By 9 o'clock, Hank had wandered over, Max the terrier yapping at his heels. He leaned on the fence, eyes sparkling. "Well, look at that. Pool's got a leak the size of Niagara, huh?" "Maintenance," I said deadpan. "Of course," Hank winked, lowering his voice. "Janice looked like she swallowed a lemon whole when she walked by earlier. Guess Karen got your little love letter this morning." I smiled. I'd made sure of that, typed out a polite notice to the HOA board declaring urgent owner-initiated repairs, complete with all the legal citations. Janice had been the unlucky courier, which meant Karen already knew her venue was vanishing inch by inch. And sure enough, at 9:45 a.m. I heard it, the screech of tires at the curb. Her car door slammed. Heels hit concrete, sharp and furious. Karen came storming up the driveway, clipboard clutched like a weapon, Janice trailing behind like a nervous shadow. From where I sat, coffee in hand, I could see the exact moment her eyes landed on the hose snaking into the storm drain. The way her jaw dropped as she realized what the sound was. She didn't even bother with fake pleasantries this time. "Tom," she barked, "what in the world is this?" I rose slowly, deliberately, keeping my tone calm. "Morning, Karen. Lovely day, isn't it?" Her eyes blazed. Don't you play games with me. What is that noise? What have you done? Maintenance, I said simply. Urgent maintenance, safety comes first. Her voice went shrill. Maintenance, you drained the pool on the very day of the HOA's most important event of the year. Are you insane? Janice hovered, wringing her hands, clearly wishing she was anywhere else. Sam sat stiff in his chair, clutching his sketchbook, but to his credit, he didn't run. He held his ground, even if his knuckles were white. I stepped closer, my voice low, firm. Karen, this is my pool, my property, and I'm maintaining it exactly as I'm allowed to. You want 50 VIPs splashing around in there. Sorry, not safe, not sanitary. Her face flushed red, then blotchy white. This is sabotage. This is against the mandate, against community spirit. Community spirit? I raised an eyebrow. Or the fact that you sold tickets. The words landed like a strike. For a second she froze, eyes wide. Janice gasped, even she hadn't known. I leaned in, calm, deliberate. Yeah, I know about your little scheme. Non-refundable entry fees, swag bags, 50 guests expecting their exclusive aquatic oasis. You sold them something you never owned. Karen's mask cracked. For once her voice faltered. That's irrelevant. No, I said softly, that's fraud. For a moment, the only sound was the steady hum of the pump, the water gurgling away like laughter. Hank had drifted out to his porch, leaning against the railing with a grin, enjoying the show. He gave me a discreet thumbs up when Karen wasn't looking. Karen's fury reignited, brittle and desperate. This isn't over, Tom. You'll regret this. The fines will be astronomical. Everyone will know who ruined this community's event. Everyone. She spun on her heel, nearly knocking Janice over in her rush back to the car. The engine roared, tires squealed, and she was gone. Sam exhaled shakily, his shoulders sagging. She's really mad. I put a hand on his shoulder. Let her be mad, we're in the right. And as the water line dipped lower and lower, the tiles revealed themselves like bones beneath the surface. The pool was turning hollow, echoing, a perfect metaphor for Karen's empire. Grand on the outside, empty underneath. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Karen wasn't the type to lick her wounds and walk away. No, this was just the first skirmish. The real war was still coming when her VIPs arrived expecting paradise and found a desert. For now, though, I sat back down in my chair, sipping the last of my lukewarm coffee, the pump still roaring like defiance itself. And in that moment, for the first time all week, I felt something I hadn't in days. Control. The hours between Karen's angry retreat and the scheduled party time ticked by like a slow, cruel drumbeat. The pump kept humming, chewing through thousands of gallons, each roar another nail in Karen's grand illusion. Sam sat beside me, sketching with a strange calm, the lines on his page sharp and bold. Every few minutes he'd glance at the sinking water line and smirk just a little. It was the first time I'd seen him draw with confidence in weeks. By 1 o'clock, the pool was little more than a hollow basin. The once blue shimmer was gone, replaced by bare tile, cracked sunlight, and puddles that clung stubbornly to the deep end. It looked alien, stripped bare, like some archaeological dig site. I switched off the pump, coiled the hoses, and carried out my last piece of preparation, a big white foam board sign with bold black letters. Pool closed. Urgent owner repairs. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. Sam had added a little cartoon of a sad-faced pool in the corner, and somehow that tiny doodle made the sign hit harder. I propped it right at the gate, the first thing anyone would see. It was official. It was final. Hank came by around 1:30, carrying a tray of sandwiches and lemonade like he was supplying a battlefront. He set it on the patio table and surveyed the scene with theatrical pride. Magnificent, absolutely magnificent. A thing of beauty, or more accurately, a beautiful lack of things. You've gutted her, Tom. I laughed once, low and grim. We'll see. She won't quit until the curtain falls. He patted my shoulder. Then let's make sure it's a show worth watching. Right on cue, headlights glinted at the end of the street. Shiny SUVs, sleek sedans, luxury crossovers. They lined the curb one after another like a parade of entitlement. Men in pressed shirts and loafers stepped out. Women in wide-brimmed hats and flowing dresses checked their phones. their heels clicking against the asphalt. Sam retreated into the house to watch from the window. Hank pulled up a chair on his porch like he was buying front-row tickets to a comedy show. And then Karen arrived. She climbed out of her car, brittle smile plastered onto her face, eyes sparkling with the fake warmth she saved for strangers she wanted to impress. She started waving, calling out greetings, ushering her so-called VIPs toward my gate with the energy of a game show host. She hadn't seen it yet. Not until her guests reached the sign, not until her eyes flicked past it. She froze, smile gone, jaw slack. Her head jerked toward the patio and she saw the gaping tiled emptiness where her sparkling oasis was supposed to be. Her complexion drained paler than the pool itself. The woman in the enormous hat stopped short. "Karen, darling," she trilled, her voice sharp as ice. "Is this performance art, some sort of avant-garde thing?" The man beside her frowned, his yacht club sunglasses glinting. "We were promised an aquatic oasis. This looks like a construction site." Guests began clustering at the end of the driveway, murmuring, glancing at phones, confusion spreading like a virus. Their expectation turned to discomfort. Discomfort curdled into doubt. Karen's mask cracked. Her brittle smile broke. She spun on her heels, storming toward me like a missile. Her heels pounded the pavement, her face twisted with rage. "What have you done?" she shrieked, her voice splitting the air. "This is vandalism. You vandalized HOA property." Her guests watched, wide-eyed, some filming on their phones. Hank chuckled darkly from his porch. I stayed calm, hands in my pockets. My pool, my property, and it needed urgent maintenance. Safety first, right? "Don't you dare play this game with me," she howled, voice cracking. "You ruined everything. You sabotaged the most important community event of the year, my reputation." She snapped out her phone, hands shaking, and jabbed the screen. Her voice hit a pitch I didn't know humans could reach. "Yes, police. I need officers immediately. There's been vandalism. A community facility has been destroyed. Send someone now." Even I had to blink at that. False report filed in real time. Around us, her so-called VIPs began backing away, shifting uncomfortably. The woman in the hat muttered something about refunds. A man in a sharp suit pulled his phone out, typing furiously. This wasn't a glamorous party anymore. It was a scandal unraveling in real time. Karen kept shrieking into her phone. "He drained it. He drained the pool out of spite. My event is ruined, my reputation." Her words broke into sobs of fury. And then the sound cut through the neighborhood. Sirens. Blue lights strobed against the houses. 2 police cruisers rolled up, tires crunching on asphalt. Neighbors peeked from windows, curtains twitching, drawn by the noise. The scene had grown into a full-blown spectacle. Karen rushed to the first officer like a drowning woman grasping for a life raft. "Thank heavens you're here," she cried dramatically, pointing at me, then the hollow pool. "That man deliberately vandalized HOA property. He ruined our vital event. Arrest him." The officer, tall, stern-faced, name-tag reading Miller, looked at me, then at the pool, then at Karen. His expression didn't move. His partner, Officer Diaz, a younger woman, approached the lingering guests, asking quiet questions. Some of them were already filming, narrating the chaos for their feeds. This was going to go viral. "Ma'am," Miller said firmly, "you're saying this gentleman vandalized this pool?" Karen nodded furiously. "Yes, it's an HOA-designated prime community area. He drained it out of spite." The officer turned to me. His eyes were steady, unreadable. "Sir, is that true? Did you drain this pool today, knowing there was an event scheduled here?" My heart pounded, but my voice stayed level. "Officer, my name is Tom Henderson. This is my private property. The pool is on my land, and yes, I drained it for urgent maintenance." I held out the deed, the plat map. "I posted a notice this morning. Pool closed, no trespassing." Miller took the papers, scanning them with a practiced eye. He glanced at Diaz, who nodded after talking with a couple of guests. Then he looked back at Karen. "Ma'am, is this pool on Mr. Henderson's private lot, or is it a community pool owned by the HOA?" Karen sputtered. "Well, yes, it's technically on his lot, but the HOA has oversight. We have the mandate, the event priority mandate." She thrust her clipboard at him like a knight brandishing a broken sword. Miller barely glanced at it. He turned back to me. "Deed's clear, pool's yours." The silence that fell was heavier than any scream. And in that silence, the cracks in Karen's empire began to show. For a moment, it felt like the whole neighborhood held its breath. Officer Miller stood there with my deed in one hand, Karen's flimsy clipboard mandate in the other, and the hollow pool yawning behind me like a silent witness. The pump had done its job. Now the truth would do the rest. Karen, pale but defiant, jabbed her finger toward me. "You can't just side with him. That pool was designated for community use. He's obstructing the HOA, sabotaging the most important event of the year." Miller raised an eyebrow, slow and steady. "Ma'am, an internal HOA document doesn't override legal property rights. This deed is clear. The pool is private property. He can maintain it however he wants, including draining it." Her jaw worked furiously, but no sound came out. It was Janice, still lurking in the background, eyes wide, who broke first with a faint gasp. She'd known, deep down, Karen had overreached, but the full weight of it was only just sinking in. Miller's tone sharpened. "Ma'am, did Mr. Henderson give you permission to host an event here today?" Karen's face flushed blotchy red. Not exactly, but he knew about it. He's being difficult. Everyone in this community knows how obstructive he is." "Obstructive," I muttered under my breath. "That's one word for protecting your own home." But Miller wasn't letting it slide. "Yes or no, ma'am, did he give permission?" Karen hesitated, then dropped her gaze. "No." The silence after that single word was deafening. And then came the nail in the coffin. Officer Diaz, who had been speaking quietly with some of the so-called VIPs, stepped forward. "Sir," she said to me, "one of these guests tells me they paid money to attend this party. $100 per ticket. Is that correct?" Before I could even answer, a man in a sharp gray suit, clearly a lawyer of some sort, stepped forward, waving Karen's flyer like it was Exhibit A. "Yes, officer. I paid her. $100. She told us this was the most exclusive venue in Willow Creek. And now I see it's someone else's private property? This is outrageous." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A woman in designer sunglasses nodded angrily. "I paid too, non-refundable," she said. Karen's eyes darted around like a trapped animal. That's irrelevant. It was for the good of the community." Miller's eyes narrowed, his voice suddenly colder. "Ma'am, were you charging people money to attend an event on someone else's private property without the owner's permission?" The question hit her like a body blow. She sputtered, hands waving. It was a suggested donation for community improvements, for ambience." The lawyer's voice cut through like a scalpel. "That's fraudulent misrepresentation. You sold tickets under false pretenses. I'll be demanding a full refund, and if others here join me, you could be facing a class action lawsuit." The murmurs swelled into angry voices. Guests pulled out their phones, scrolling through receipts, emails, texts from Karen. Some were already dialing numbers. Others filmed openly, catching every second of her unraveling. Karen's clipboard slipped from her hand, clattering to the pavement. Her once perfect posture crumpled with it. I almost felt pity, but then I thought of Sam, clutching his sketchbook with trembling hands all week, afraid this woman would trample our sanctuary, and the pity vanished. Officer Miller folded his arms. "Ma'am, not only have you misused emergency services by making a false vandalism report, but you may also have committed fraud by selling tickets to an event you had no legal right to host. Do you understand the severity of this?" Karen's voice cracked. "This isn't fraud, it's community spirit. These people don't understand. He's twisting this." But the crowd was no longer hers. The woman in the oversized hat shook her head, disgusted. "Community spirit? You scammed us, Karen. You promised us an oasis, and you delivered an empty hole in the ground." Laughter broke out, bitter and mocking. Even Hank couldn't resist calling from his porch. "Don't forget the ambience, folks. Top-notch ambience right there." Max barked like he agreed. Karen spun, eyes wild, searching for an ally. Janice looked away. The guests glared. Even her heels seemed to betray her, wobbling as she tried to stand tall. Miller sighed, his patience thinning. "Here, what's going to happen? We're not arresting anyone today, but you, ma'am, are receiving a formal warning for misuse of 911. You will need to resolve these ticket issues immediately with your guests, and I strongly suggest you and your board review your bylaws to avoid pulling a stunt like this again. Understand?" Karen's lips trembled, but... "No buts," Diaz cut in firmly. "You've overstepped and everyone here knows it." The guests began dispersing, some shaking their heads, others openly filming Karen's humiliation. A few muttered about refunds. The lawyer was already on his phone, packing, using words like civil action and liability. Karen stood in the middle of it all, clipboard abandoned, her empire of control dissolving around her. And me, I didn't raise my voice, didn't gloat. I simply stood on my patio, deed in hand, beside my drained pool, letting the truth do the work. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it hums quietly, like a pump draining a pool, steady, relentless, impossible to ignore. The officers wrapped up, Diaz giving me the faintest nod as they headed back to their cruisers. The sirens faded into the distance, and the street began to clear. Only Hank lingered, strolling over with a grin wider than the Grand Canyon. "Well, son," he said, clapping me on the shoulder, "I think that's what you call a checkmate. She tried to crown herself Queen of Willow Creek, and you just knocked her off the board with one move." Sam finally came outside, eyes shining with something I hadn't seen in a long time, relief. He hugged me tight. "You did it, Tom, you really did it." I looked past him at the empty pool, tiles gleaming in the sun like polished stone. Hollow but peaceful, and for the first time in days I felt the tension drain out of me too. Karen had thrown everything at us, threats, mandates, fines, even lies. But in the end, she couldn't fight the one thing stronger than her clipboard. The truth. By the time the cruisers rolled off and the last grumbling guest disappeared down the street, the neighborhood had changed. You could feel it in the air, like a storm that had broken, leaving everything still, but never the same. Karen's clipboard still lay on the pavement where she dropped it, the symbol of her reign abandoned. She didn't even bend to pick it up when she finally slunk back to her car. Her heels clicked slower than ever before. She drove off without a word, without looking back, her empire dissolving with every taillight flash. But the silence she left behind wasn't peaceful. It was electric. Because this wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was a story, and stories don't stay quiet in Willow Creek. That evening my phone buzzed with a dozen messages. Neighbors, some I barely knew, texting clips of Karen's meltdown, grainy phone videos of her shrieking at the empty pool, the lawyer calling out fraud, Officer Miller's deadpan voice saying, "This is private property." One video even caught Max, Hank's terrier, lifting his leg on Karen's prize marigolds, the crowd laughing in the background. But it wasn't just neighbors who had seen it. By nightfall, the influencer in the wide-brimmed hat had uploaded a polished video to her massive following. She framed it as the HOA pool party disaster, with dramatic captions and slow-motion shots of Karen's meltdown. The empty pool gleamed behind her like a crime scene. It hit thousands of views within hours. Comments piled up. "Classic HOA overreach." "That poor homeowner, good on him for standing his ground." "Karen's gonna be a meme by morning." And she was. By Sunday, Karen's face, contorted in rage, screaming into her phone, was everywhere. Screenshots turned into GIFs. Someone paired the footage with captions, "Me when Starbucks is out of oat milk." Another added booming music under Officer Miller's calm verdict. "It's his private property." Sam showed me one, trying not to laugh, his shoulders shaking. She's a hashtag, Tom, empty pool party, it's everywhere." And for the first time in days, my brother wasn't afraid. He was smiling. Still, I knew better than to think it was over. Karen didn't surrender gracefully. If she'd been humiliated, she would claw harder to rebuild her power. And the HOA board, Janice and old Mr. Henderson, they'd have to face the fallout too. Sure enough, by Monday morning, the notice board by the mailboxes was plastered with furious scribbles. Someone had pinned up Karen's glossy flyer with the words scam scrawled across it in red marker. Another note read, "Where's my refund, Karen?" Neighbors gathered around it like it was the town square, murmuring, shaking their heads. Hank leaned against the post with his terrier at his feet, grinning like a proud conspirator. "The tide's turning, Tom. She's lost her grip." I wanted to believe him, but I'd seen the way Karen's eyes had burned when she hissed at me. "This isn't over." No, she wasn't done, not yet. That week, whispers spread like wildfire. Some neighbors had received tickets directly from Karen. Others had Venmo transfers marked HOA event. People started comparing notes, realizing how deep the scam ran. The lawyer, whose name I later learned was Richard, began gathering names, quietly building a case. Meanwhile, Sam was like a different person. With Karen off his back, at least temporarily, he spent hours sketching out by the drained pool. His drawings turned bright again, landscapes, animals, little comics of Hank's terrier chasing Karen's clipboard down the street. I'd glance at him, lost in his art, and feel the tension unwind in my chest. Protecting him had always been my mission, and for once I felt like I'd actually won a round. But the true test was still ahead, the HOA board meeting. Hank told me about it midweek, his voice crackling with glee. "Packed house, Tom, standing room only, everyone wants blood. Karen's hiding hasn't shown her face since the fiasco, but Janice, poor Janice looked like a deer in headlights when people started shouting about fraud and ticket refunds." "Did she defend Karen?" I asked. "Half-heartedly, claimed it was all a misunderstanding. But old Mr. Henderson, you know, the one who usually just nods along, he spoke up. Said Karen had embarrassed the community, overstepped, and maybe even exposed them to legal action. First time I've heard that man string together more than 3 words at a meeting." I let that sink in. Karen's strongest ally was cracking. Even her rubber stamp board members were turning. Still, I didn't attend. Neither did Sam. We sat on the back patio instead, watching the sun set over the empty basin of the pool. I grilled burgers and Sam hummed tunelessly as he drew. We didn't need to be in that room to know how it would end. And sure enough, Hank came by afterward, bursting with the kind of joy only schadenfreude brings. "Tom, my boy, it was glorious, the event mandate. Rescinded so fast it left skid marks. And Karen, she wasn't even there, no show. 2 days later, her resignation letter shows up on the board, just a single typed sheet. 'I hereby resign as president of the Willow Creek HOA.' No apology, no explanation, just gone." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of it all finally lifting. And Janice. "She followed her out the door. Personal reasons," she said. Hank chuckled. "The HOA in shambles, but honestly, that might be the best thing to happen around here in years." I looked over at Sam. He was smiling so wide I could see the dimple in his cheek, the one I hadn't seen since before Karen's reign. He raised his lemonade in a silent toast, and I raised mine back. Karen had built her empire on fear, fines, and the illusion of control. But all it took was one drained pool, one truth louder than her lies, to tear it all down. And though I knew she'd slink away nursing her grudge, I also knew something she hadn't realized yet. When you try to steal someone's sanctuary, you don't just face resistance. You face a man willing to go as far as it takes. And this time, the quiet man with the pump had won. It's strange how silence feels after a storm. Not the peaceful kind, not at first. More like the ringing in your ears after an explosion, empty, disorienting, almost too loud in its own way. That's how the neighborhood felt in the days after Karen vanished. Her resignation letter had been slipped under Janice's door, a single page without her usual flourish, no embossed letterhead, no flowery closing statement. Just one sentence. "I hereby resign as president of the Willow Creek HOA." Cold, empty, abrupt. For years, her voice had been the one dictating fines, notices, mandates. For years, people had tiptoed past her house, afraid a weed too tall or a car parked crooked would spark another citation. And then, gone, just like that. At first, people didn't believe it. They expected her to return, clipboard in hand, demanding restitution. But as days passed, the reality sank in. The Queen of Willow Creek had abdicated not in triumph but in disgrace. I still remember the morning Hank came strutting across my yard with a newspaper tucked under his arm and a grin plastered on his face. "Front page of the local section," he crowed, waving the folded paper like a victory flag. "HOA president steps down amid scandal." They even printed a photo. Karen, mid-scream, frozen forever with that wild, desperate look in her eye. Sam peeked over my shoulder at the article, his lips twitching into a grin. He'd drawn that exact face the night before, sketching it into one of his cartoons. In his version, Karen was yelling at the pool itself, which sat there smugly, arms crossed, refusing to be filled. "That's her legacy now," Hank said with satisfaction. "Not the fancy gates she installed, not the painted curbs or the endless fines. Nope, it's empty pool party." He laughed so hard Max barked like he was in on the joke. But for me, it wasn't just about Karen's humiliation. It was about the air finally feeling lighter. Sam no longer flinched when the mail truck stopped at our box. He walked taller when we strolled down the street, nodding at neighbors who smiled instead of scowled. Our home finally felt like ours again. Of course, the HOA itself was in shambles. With Karen gone and Janice stepping down soon after, meetings turned chaotic. No one wanted the gavel. No one wanted to be the next target of community ire. Some argued for dissolving the HOA altogether, letting the neighborhood govern itself with nothing but county laws and common sense. Others worried about property values, about what freedom might mean when the Joneses down the block painted their shutters neon green. But me, I didn't care anymore. Let them fight about bylaws and budgets. All I knew was that Karen was out, her claws no longer reaching for my property, my peace, my family. That was enough. It was late one evening when the reality of it all truly hit me. Sam and I sat on the patio, fireflies flickering at the edges of the yard, the drained pool a hollow silhouette in the moonlight. He had his sketchbook open, but instead of drawing, he just stared at the blank page. "You okay, kiddo?" I asked softly. He nodded, then whispered, "It's quiet now, I like it." And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't fully understood before. This wasn't about a pool. It wasn't about bylaws or mandates or even Karen's fraud. It was about quiet, about sanctuary, about giving my brother the kind of peace he'd been denied for too long. That was victory, not her downfall, not her resignation, not the memes or the headlines, just Sam sitting on our porch, breathing without fear. Still, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that savored the justice of it all. I thought of every threat Karen had hurled, every smug smirk when she believed she held the upper hand. And I thought of the hum of the pump, steady and relentless, draining away not just water, but her illusion of control. It was poetic. Hank called it karma. And maybe it was. But I also knew something else. People like Karen never truly disappear. They slink into the shadows, regroup, look for new ways to wield power. Maybe she'd move to another community, start over, clipboard in hand. Maybe she'd stew in silence, waiting for a chance to lash back. That possibility lingered like a shadow at the edges of my peace. But if it ever came to that, I'd be ready. Because I'd learned something too. I'd learned that sometimes resistance doesn't look like shouting. Sometimes it doesn't look like fighting. Sometimes it's as simple as a pump humming in the night, a deed in your hand, and the courage to say no. Karen never understood that. She thought power lived in rules and fines and fear. She never realized that real power, quiet, steady power, comes from standing your ground even when your voice shakes. That night, Sam finally put pencil to paper. He drew us, not the pool, not Karen, not Hank and his terrier. Just the two of us sitting side by side under the stars. No words, just quiet, just peace. When he showed me, I felt something catch in my throat, because that was it. That was the ending I wanted, not her downfall, but our freedom. Still, as I closed my eyes that night, I couldn't help but imagine Karen's face the moment she saw the drained pool. The shock, the fury, the defeat. And for once, I slept soundly. So I recently went through something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. Watching an empire collapse, not with explosions or riots, but with a single drained pool and the truth. Karen never came back. Not to the meetings, not to the street she once patrolled like a general inspecting her troops. Her blinds stayed drawn, her garden wilted, her clipboard gathered dust. Neighbors said she was seen once, hurriedly carrying boxes into her car, her face hidden behind oversized sunglasses. But just like that, the woman who once controlled every inch of our lives was gone. The HOA, stripped of its queen, limped along in confusion. Some tried to resurrect order, but the fear was gone. Without Karen's voice booming fines and threats, the bylaws looked flimsy, the mandates laughable. For the first time in years, people planted what flowers they wanted, parked where they pleased, painted their doors colors Karen would have fainted over. And no one complained. Funny how quickly freedom can spread once fear loses its grip. But the victory wasn't loud for me. It wasn't in the memes or the headlines or the satisfaction of seeing Karen exposed as the fraud she was. My victory came in small, quiet moments, the ones no camera could capture. It came in Sam, walking with his shoulders relaxed again, no longer glancing nervously at every envelope in the mailbox. It came in his laughter at Hank's terrible jokes, in his sketches of ordinary life without monsters lurking at the edge of the page. It came in me, finally sleeping through the night without replaying Karen's threats in my head like a broken record. Because sometimes peace isn't something you win. Sometimes it's something you protect. I thought about that a lot in the weeks after, about how power works, how control can masquerade as order. Karen believed she was keeping the neighborhood beautiful, valuable, civilized. But what she was really doing was stripping people of their dignity piece by piece. She forgot that rules mean nothing without respect, that fear doesn't create community, it poisons it. The drained pool had been my line in the sand, not just for her, but for me. It was the moment I decided that my family's peace, my brother's well-being, was worth more than any bylaw, any mandate, any HOA president's illusion of power. And once that line was drawn, there was no going back. The neighborhood changed after that. People began waving more, talking more. Without Karen's shadow looming over us, there was room for something else, connection. The board meetings, though chaotic, were filled with laughter now, too. Someone even suggested renaming the HOA newsletter to the Empty Pool Times. Hank volunteered to write the humor column. Sam flourished most of all. His art grew bolder, brighter, brimming with life. One evening he showed me a sketch he'd been working on for days. It was of our backyard, the pool full again, but not sparkling and perfect like Karen would have demanded. Instead, it was simple, imperfect, alive. Me on the patio, Hank and Max next door, Sam himself floating on an inflatable pencil in hand, drawing as the sun went down. "That's what it's supposed to be," he said softly. "Not perfect, just ours." And he was right. Karen may have thought she'd won when she first declared the pool hers. She may have thought she could bully, threaten, even sell tickets to our peace. But in the end, all she did was show everyone who she really was. And once the mask slipped, there was nothing left for her to hold on to. Sometimes the strongest battles aren't fought with fists or firepower. They're fought with patience, with truth, with the courage to say enough. I drained a pool. But really, what I did was drain her power, her lies, her grip on a neighborhood that had forgotten what it felt like to breathe. And maybe that's the lesson here. That no matter how loud the Karens of the world get, no matter how many fines they wave or threats they scream, their control only works if we let it. Stand your ground, protect your peace, and never, ever let someone else convince you that your sanctuary belongs to them. Because the moment you do, the moment you choose courage over fear, that's when the clipboard cracks, that's when the empire falls. That's when freedom begins. So I recently went through a battle I didn't ask for, against a woman who thought she owned everything she touched. She tried to claim my pool, my land, even my family's peace. But in the end, she lost it all. And what did I gain? The quiet, the laughter, the sanctuary I'd been fighting for all along. And sometimes, that's the greatest victory there is.